Good evening, Wings of Faith, and to our entire Faith Nation, to the community of faith, and welcome once more again to our Tuesday Therapy in the Word. Let me thank you for your fellowship and your fellowship. I want to thank all those that are tuning in, those that are near, those that are of a distance, and those that are abroad. We're so grateful to all of our, to just how far our message is going. And I just wanted to take a moment just to thank you so much for your follow these that we are traveling in these very disturbing and so I'm so honored and so honored that the ministry of faith and that the word that I'm preaching and teaching is in somehow, some way, some form, some fashion empowering you, encouraging you, enhancing you, and equipping you as a people of God, that you might be prepared for the kingdom of God, and in the midst that you might be used by the power of God. So we're excited about what God is doing. We're excited about what God has done. And we're even more excited about what God is getting ready to do. I want to thank all those that tune in on Sunday. Wow, I know, I'm still tired. My feet just got through dancing. Spirit just got through shouting. Hands just got through praising. I am so honored, so pleased at the fact that God stopped by and visits us so heavily, so mightily, the way He does. I want to give a special shout out to our praise team, to the front line. Thank you, Foster, all of you all. Thank you so much, Eric Marlowe, for just allowing the Lord to use y'all so heavily on Sunday. Can't wait to see what y'all going to do this Sunday coming up. I'm excited for you. And to the baddest band in the land, thank y'all so much. I say it all the time, teamwork makes the dream work. And so all of those on the other side of the camera, all those in the balcony, all of those in all of our administrative offices, thank you so much. Because again, teamwork makes the dream work. And I am so much better because of you. Our numbers has begun to spike and spike again. So I want to thank you again to the last audience that we just pulled in. Those in Puerto Rico had opportunity to minister this week. And our broadcast went as far as Kuwait on this last week. And so I just want to thank all those that tuned in and that was a part, receiving their impartation from what thus said the Lord. Well, about a week ago, I did a message called Unnecessary Chapters out of the book of Jonah, where I laid out the subject matter or the narrative that Jonah is a book of great brevity, only 4 chapters, but believe it or not, out of 4 chapters, he had a couple of unnecessary chapters that he just did not have to have. My narrative and what the Lord has shared with me to share with you is that thus as it is oftentimes with us as children of God, that because of disobedience, that oftentimes we write pages or we find ourselves writing stories on the pages of our lives by which God never ordained, never affirmed, and never wanted for us to have. It's just unnecessary seasons. And time is so precious. And I don't know who I'm talking to, but please know this. You cannot get time back. You can't even make time up. Whatever time you have is the time you have. So you want to take the advantage of the time you have. And you don't want to waste the time you have in unnecessary chapters. So we did part 1 on last week, and I want to come tonight and do part 2. So if you have your Bibles, move quickly over to the book of Jonah. Again, Jonah has 4 chapters, and I normally deal with the first 3. I might even go into number 4, I'll let you know. But I showed with you the difference between the first 3 chapters. And I'll just go over that for just a moment, and then we'll go right into chapter number 2. I shared with you that in chapter 1 you have Jonah, which is my point. In chapter 1 you have Jonah running from God. In chapter 2 you have Jonah running toward God. In chapter 3 you have Jonah running with God. In chapter 1 you see Jonah being disobedient. In chapter 2 you see him dealing with devastation. In chapter 3 you see him being disciplined. In chapter 1, you see him rebelling. In chapter 2, remember, you see him repenting. And in chapter 3, you see his resilience. In chapter 1, you see him being negative. In chapter 2, you see troubles or burdens multiplying. In chapter 3, you see him adding souls to the kingdom of God. In chapter 1, he doesn't want God. In chapter 2, he realized he needs God. In chapter 3, he's just glad he got God. In chapter 1, he's protesting. Chapter 2, he's on punishment. Chapter 3, he's being promoted. Chapter 1, his life is one big mistake. Chapter 2, his life is one big mess. But in chapter 3, his life really is one big miracle. Chapter 1, he steps back. Chapter 2, he gets set back. But in chapter 3, we see him come back. Chapter 1, he turns back. In chapter 2, he turns it over. In chapter 3, God turns it on. So again, we look at it, we know that in chapter 1, he steps out the will of God. In chapter 2, he seeks the ways of God. In chapter 3, he starts to work for God. So again, chapter 1, he does what? In chapter 1, he's running where? From God. Chapter 2, he's doing what? He's running toward God. So tonight deals with the dimension of him running toward God. Now, I shared with you on last week, in case you don't know the story, I'll take 30 seconds to tell you this, that the Lord, the voice of the Lord spoke unto Jonah and told Jonah that he wanted him to go to Nineveh to cry unto that city. Jonah decided he was going to go down to Joppe. Joppe was a seaport city where he went to buy a ticket. That's where all the boats were. Jonah decided to go to Joppe, and instead of going to Nineveh, where God told him to go, that he would go to Tarshish. Well, what's the big difference, Bishop? The big difference was to go to Nineveh, he would have had to travel 500 miles to go to Nineveh. 500 miles to the east. Yeah, 500 miles to the east to go to Nineveh. He goes, get a ticket to go to Tarshish. Tarshish is 2,500 miles to the west. So he was supposed to go to the east. He decides to go to the west. He's supposed to go 500 miles to be in the presence of God. He decides to go 2,500 miles to be out of the premises, out of the presence of God. You got it? So again, what does it show? 500 miles to be in the presence of God, 2,500 miles to be out of the presence of God, 500 miles to be obedient, 2,500 miles to be disobedient. What does it show? It shows that it takes more to do wrong than it does to do right. You see that? All right. So what happened? He gets out on the boat. We all know he goes on. He gets the ticket. He gets on the boat. He's out on the sea. He feels he's gotten away from God. He falls asleep. He falls asleep because sin always makes you comfortable. At the beginning, sin always makes you comfortable. So what did he do? He fell asleep because sin comforts you. All right? Sin is his comfort. Then God sends a storm that he caused. And then they end up waking him up, bringing him up to the top of the boat, having an interrogation, and finally, Jonah is picked up and thrown overboard. Sin begins by comforting you. But by the time sin gets a grip on you, it goes from a comfort to controversy. So now he's being thrown overboard. So now he's in a more controversial situation, goes into the sea. Okay, his biggest conflict, swallowed up by the whale, which is confinement. You get it? You see how sin works? All right. So now he's in confinement. So I want to pick up on something at the end of chapter 1 that a lot of ministers don't deal with. And I know I have a lot of ministers that watch. So I think this is a good point for you all if you're going to preach it. I think it's a good point. So chapter 1 ends on verse 17. There's 17 verses in chapter 1, the 10 verses in chapter 2. So in chapter 1, it ends like this. Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Do it again. Now the Lord prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. One more time. Clause A. 17 clause A. You got it? Here we go. Now the Lord had prepared a great fish, all right, to swallow up Jonah. All right, we want to deal with that. Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah. Why do I want to take a moment and deal with this? Because ministers never deal with this. Most of them never deal with this. And it's important. And it's easier to do it really in Bible study than it is in preaching because it lengthens the tenure of the message. I want to deal with that word prepared. All right? Because The Bible never tells us that it was a whale. It tells us he prepared a fish. But based on intellectual assumption, based on facts, based on knowing the creatures of the sea, the most obvious fish that God could have used to swallow Jonah would have been a whale. All right? That's the most obvious that we could see at what I call first glance. But I'm going to show you also why the most obvious choice wouldn't have been God's first choice unless he had to alter the choice. The most obvious choice, if you're going to get an animal to swallow up a man in the sea, would be the whale, because he's the biggest animal in the sea. But because of his bio makeup, he's the one animal you don't want to try to use to swallow up a male. So God had to alter the choice. That's why the text said he had to prepare a fish. So it couldn't just been no any fish or no any whale. He had to alter it. I'm going to show it to you. So one of the biggest things is when we deal with this text, most people don't know anything about whales. And I did extensive studies on it years ago, and I pulled it out today, looking over some things, made some notes. And I'll just introduce you to the whale. Take 2 or 3 minutes to introduce you to the whale, and then tell you why God had to prepare the fish. All right? So watch this. Stay with me. First of all, I'm going to tell you that whales are what they call warm-blooded mammals. They're warm-blooded. All right? First thing you want to know. You may not know, but whales produce milk. They produce milk whenever they're going to feed their young. So after a whale has birthed, after a whale has had a birthing, their body produces milk. All right? Another thing I'm going to tell you that you can learn is that when a whale gives birth, she gives birth underwater. When the whale gives birth, she gives birth to the whale underwater. She then pushes the baby whale up to the top of the surface so that the whale can take his first breath. He takes his first breath toward the top of the surface. And then the mother whale stays with the baby whale for at least a year. The mother whale, it has such a connection that if baby whale dies, or if a whale dies and the mother whale is anywhere in that proximity, the mother whale oftentimes will come and hover over that whale, sometime from 3 months to 6 months to a year, because of their connections. All right? So the mother instinct in the whale is extremely strong. All right? Let me tell you this. The whale, of course, as you know it, you can identify it easily because his mouth is so large, his head is so large, his mouth is so wide, and his tail is so extensive. You can tell his body is so huge and long, and his tail is extremely extensive and is flat. So the whale, of course, is the largest animal in the sea. What most people don't know is not only is the whale the biggest fish in the sea, lean in, the whale is the biggest animal God ever created in the world. Let me say it again. The whale is the biggest animal that God has ever created in the world. There's 2 categories of whales, but 63 species of whale. But the largest whale in the world, or the largest whales in the world, the largest whales in the sea, are actually the largest animals in the world in all history, including dinosaurs, Rex, Triceratops, whatever you want to call them. The entire, it is when God created the whale, it was the largest mammal that God ever created in creation. There is no creature nowhere in the world that's bigger than the largest of whales. The largest whale can weigh 150 tons and can be 90 feet long. Yeah, the whale's a bad boy. Now the baddest thing in the sea is the killer whale. Now you all know the killer whale, you just don't know it was a killer whale. The killer whale is what most people know because the killer whale, as children as youth we got introduced to the killer whale because they had one in SeaWorld named Shamu. Y'all remember Shamu? Pretty black whale with the white patch around the eye? Yeah, because the killer whale was easy to train. You know why? Because the killer whale is actually in the family of the dolphins. So it's the smartest whale. The killer whale is the smartest whale. It's not the largest whale or the biggest whale. That's why they're easy to contain. Okay? But the killer whale is also the one whale that can turn on you at any time. When you see the novel, the book, and the movie that introduced all of us to whales, it was called Moby Dick. Moby Dick really wasn't a killer whale. He was a blue whale, what is called a blue whale. The blue whale is the largest whale in the world. And what they did in the movie, and what they do in the movie in Hollywood is whenever they're going to make a movie about a whale, if it's a whale that's attacking, what they do is the movie is made with a killer. The movie is made with a blue whale, with the size of the movie is made with the size of a blue whale, but the characteristics of a killer whale. Because the biggest whale in the world is not an attack whale. You got it? All right. The two categories of whale, one is called a baleen and one is called a toothed whale. A baleen whale and a toothed whale. A toothed whale is what the killer whale is, which simply means, but watch this, it's a whale that has teeth. Has teeth like a shark. Okay? The baleen, when God made the baleen, the biggest animal God ever made, he did not give it teeth. Lean in. I got a little statement I say. I say it all the time. People miss it. You ready? God gave everything something, but never gave anything everything. Y'all get it out the mouth. You get it? So the largest animal in the world, God said, you so large, you don't need teeth. Y'all got me? All right. He has slates in his mouth. It's like slates. It's, oh God, I wish I could show it to you. But it's not teeth. All right? So that's the baleen whale. Now, the toothed whale, you'll always know the toothed whale, which most of you all are familiar with because the toothed whale has one blowhole in the back of his head. Baleen has two. All right? Someone asked the question, why do whales blow like that? Whenever you see a whale shooting water straight up out of the blowhole, it simply means that he has been submerged at a deeper level in the sea, and he comes to the top of the surface to discharge the water that is now in his respiratory, in his lung section. So that's all he's doing. He's just blowing water out of his system that has been in his system because he had been submerged. The average whale will has the ability to leap about 20 feet in the air. After he leaps 20 feet in the air once or twice, he then goes down in the middle of the sea and takes a 30-minute nap to an hour to 2 hour sleep. Then he comes back toward the surface, blow, then he goes back on 30 minutes, whatever, come back to the surface, blow, goes back down. All right? The average whale stomach can hold a small minivan. The really large blue whales can hold a small minivan. The mouth of a whale, you can put a small car right in the edge of a really large whale in the mouth. All right? The whale's a bad boy. The whale can hear 100 miles plus away. The whale can hear up to 100 miles plus away. All right? The whale is known as a highly intelligent animal. Has extremely small eyes, all right? But they are conditioned to handle pressure, wind, water, currency, all right? When God made the whale, he didn't give the whale a lot of skin. He didn't give the whale a lot of hair, all right? Lean in. If you ever see a whale, the whale's skin is what people call blubber. Blubber, all right? The whale's skin is actually, on an average, about 28 inches thick. So the whale's blubber, the blubber of a whale, is about 2.5 feet thick. You got it? All right. Okay, I just wanted to give you a couple things here. Now I want you to lean in. The text has been tailored to teach us that God prepared a fish. How much time I got? The text has been tailored to teach us that God prepared a fish. So it's not a stretch to think that God will prepare a whale to swallow man. So Bishop, why would you put it on the table and take time to deal with it? Because there's one thing about the whale that most people don't know. Yeah, you know, lean in. So this is the one thing that most people don't know about the whale. His stomach is big enough to house a man. His mouth is big enough to grab a man. But his throat is not large enough to swallow a man. The average whale's throat, you ready for this? Lean in. The average whale's throat is about 8 inches wide. The average whale's throat, watch my hands, watch this. The average whale's throat, when you get ready to swallow, is about this large. Watch this. His mouth could be 5 feet this way. Could be 4 feet that way. 5, 6 feet that way. He could be 5'5", his mouth 5 by 5, 5 by 4, 5 by 6. But when the object that he just brought into his mouth gets to his throat, it's only 8 inches of space in there for the whale to swallow. And we tell people that the whale swallowed Jonah. Lean in. That's why you cannot exegete this text, preachers. You cannot exegete this text and not deal with the fact that it says, and the Lord prepared a great fish. The whale was the great fish, but he had to prepare it. He had to open his throat to be able to swallow Jonah. Now, many people believe that Jonah was swallowed by what is called the baleen whale. All right? Now, the reason why it would have been important for Jonah to be swallowed by what is called the baleen whale is because the baleen whale wouldn't have had teeth. So he could have just swallowed Jonah and held him. Now, inside the whale's stomach, there's 4 compartments, like a cow. There's 4 compartments. So here's the miracle of the whale swallowing Jonah. 1, God had to extend his throat, his passageway, his esophagus, in order for him to swallow. 2, Jonah would have had to rest in his stomach. He would have had to rest in his stomach in the midst of acidic acids. Acids that would have been so strong that they could have bleached his skin, Clorox, Christmas Snow White. He would have been suffocated because the whales don't have oxygen in their stomach. Lean in. He would have died from suffocation because the whale is one of the few animals that when he breathes, okay, watch this. When you and I breathe, watch this. If I do this and I do this, I breathe in, I breathe out. Do you know how much air is coming out of my lungs? Come on, all my nurses, my doctor who watching. You ready? 15% of my air comes out of my lungs when I breathe. That's why it's always a trauma situation. You ever heard somebody get in an accident and they say they lung collapse? Because most people think that what happened is, most people think when you breathe in that your lungs do this. And then when you breathe out, they do this. It doesn't. Your lungs never completely flatline. You got it? About 15% of the air, 15-20% of the air go in and out, in and out. When a whale breathes, 90% of the air in his lungs do this. They come like this, and they go all the way back down. Come like this, they go all the way back down. Jonah is in the stomach of the whale, in the midst of the special acidities in his stomach that could have bleached and affected his skin, but he's also in a place where there is no oxygen. But he has to be there for 3 days. Lean in. You get it? That's why the text says God had to prepare a fish. Because God is so much God that he knows how to modify situations. He knows how to arrange situations to be able to customize it for your situation and your circumstance. So God reaches this well, prepares this well to swallow Jonah. Go to chapter 2. It's going to be quick. It's only 10 verses. Verse 1 says, Jonah prayed unto the Lord his God out of the fish of the belly. Quick question, Bible trivia. How many verses are in chapter 1? How many verses are in chapter 1? How many verses are in chapter 1? 17. Because I don't have time to wait. All right, 17. There's 17 verses in chapter 1. In 17 verses in chapter 1, not one time in 17 verses does the text say Jonah prayed. Jonah didn't pray when God spoke to him. Jonah didn't pray before he went to Joppe. Jonah didn't pray before he went on the ship. Jonah didn't pray before he went to sleep. Jonah didn't pray before he decided to go to Tarshish. Jonah didn't pray when he was talking to the mariners. Jonah didn't pray when they threw him overboard. Jonah, for the first time in chapter 2, is praying. Lean in. Listen, you can't play with God, because God has a way to make you pray. God has a way when he want to hear from you. There's things that he can organize, orchestrate in your life that's going to make you call him when you said you wouldn't call him. Going to make you need him when you thought you didn't need him. Going to make you humble down when you thought you was high. Keep on living. I'm here to tell you, between the womb and the tomb, God knows how to orchestrate your life to make you look up and say, Father, I stretch thine hand to thee, no other help I know. If thou withdraw thyself from me, whither shall I go? In verse 1, chapter 2, he's praying again. In verse 1, chapter 2, he's praying. Now, let me be theologically profound right here on behalf of all the ministers that's watching. In chapter 2, verse 1, it is symbolical of when a man meets God at the cross. It's like man meeting Christ at the cross. Okay? It's a salvation moment. In verse 1, Jonah is having a salvation moment, a soteria moment. The word soteria in Greek is where we get our word salvation, which means deliverance. In chapter 2, verse 1, Jonah is on the brink of getting delivered. So it is as if Jonah is at the cross. My sisters and brothers, I want to pause here and tell somebody, listen to me right now, that when man comes to God at the cross, this is what you have. You have man in his mess meeting God in his miracles. Let me say it again. You got man in all his mess meeting God in all his miracles. Let me say it again. You got man in all his mess coming to meet God with all his miracles. When man meet God at the cross, you got man in all his faults meeting God in all his favor. When man meet God at the cross, you got man with what he has done meeting God with what he can do. When man meets God at the cross, you got man with all his questions meeting God with all his answers. You have man with all his problems meeting God with all his solutions. Are y'all following me? I can do that all night, so I'm going to move on, okay? So in verse 1, it is a soteria moment. It's a soteria moment, and it proves one thing, subject matter. It proves one thing. It proves there's a new narrative. Just make a note of that. There's a new narrative. What's the new narrative? Verse number 1. You ready? In verse number 1, it proves the narrative. The narrative now is that Jonah has been changed. He didn't pray in verse 1, chapter 1. He didn't pray verse 2, verse 3, verse 4, verse 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He didn't pray in verse 11, verse 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. But he's praying in chapter 2, which proves he's been changed. You may not have prayed in 2019, but you prayed in 2020, right? Because depending on the chapters of your life, depending on the chapters can determine how much you pray. See, I pray every day, good, bad, ugly. I pray every day. I pray when I got it, when I don't have it. I pray when I'm right, when I'm wrong. I pray when I'm so broke I can't change my mind. I pray when I'm shop. I pray when I'm big balling, shot calling. I just pray all the time. But there are chapters in your life that enhance your prayer life. When some of y'all pray once a day. You get to chapter 2, you'll pray 7, 8 times a day. Some of y'all pray at night. You get to the right chapter, you'll pray first thing in the morning. You'll get up in the middle of the night and pray. I'm here to tell you, you'll pray on your job. Some of y'all pray cute. You get to the right chapter. You don't care who's looking at you when you pray. You don't care who hear you. You don't care if tears running, snot running. Why? Because you're trying to get an answer. Chapter 2, verse 1, we see Jonah being chained. What do we see? We see Jonah praying. All right? Now look at verse 2. And he said, I cried out by reason of my affliction unto the Lord, and he heard me out of the belly of hell. I cried, and thou heardest my voice. All right, hold up. Come on, y'all. What happens in chapter 2? I'm sorry, in verse 2. What happened in verse 2? I call it Jonah's confession. And I like his confession because he does something that most people have a problem doing. What does he do, Bishop? He owns it. He owns his luggage. He picks up his luggage. He owns his baggage. He said, I'm here because of my afflictions. Look at what he does not say. Church folks, can I get all the church folks to lean in? Please, y'all, if y'all can help me on this. Listen to what he does not say. He does not say, I'm in this mess because of him. I'm in this mess because of her. I'm in this mess because such and such. I'm in this mess because... No, he doesn't point fingers. He doesn't call names. He doesn't blame anybody. He says, I'm in this mess because of me. I didn't send the storm, but I sure caused the storm. He said, it's my afflictions. And I stopped by to tell somebody this evening. I know he wasn't a spiritual figure, but the late Michael Jackson said it best when he said these words in the lyrics. I'm starting, I know y'all know the song, with the man in the mirror. There comes a season in your life that you got to stand before God. Stop worrying about who ain't there, who ain't been there, who left you, who don't want you, who mistreated you, who hurt you, who made you cry, who made you sigh, who did you wrong song. You know, come to God. Don't come to God with a blues song. Come to God with a worship song. Say, Lord, it's me. It's me. I'm not asking you right now to work on family, friends, nobody else. I'm asking you in the season of my life that I am, that I'm in. With all this going on in my life, I have one request. Work on me. From the crown of my head to the sole of my feet. From the inside to the out, from the outside to the in. God, work on me. Why? Because it was my affliction. Now watch this. You all got that right? Okay, good. That's good teaching. I know. That's good teaching, y'all. I'm sorry, I talk to myself like that when I be, okay. All right? So he said, I'm not afflicted. He said, now guess what else verse 2 teaches us? Do I have time? Verse 2 teaches us something else. He says, it's out of my affliction that he heard me. That's important. Make a note of that. Make a note that it can be your fault. Make a note of this. You can be at fault and still get God's favor. Come on, somebody. You can be in your faults and still get God's favor. God is so much God that he did not tune or turn a deaf ear to Jonah. He said, the Bible said, Jonah said that Jonah acknowledged something. He said, it's my afflictions that got me in this mess. He said, but guess what God did? He heard me. Because that's what I like about my God. That's what I like about my Father. That's what I like about my daddy, is that he loves me so much that no matter where I am or what my situation might be, he always hears my prayer and he always answers my call. Real fathers, that's what you do. What you do. Let me tell you something. The only time I cut my phone completely off is if I'm preaching, teaching, or if I'm in ICU or CTU somewhere or court or something with somebody. But even if I have to cut it down, there is one number that I don't care where I am, what I'm doing. If I see that number, if I have to get up and run out, I'm picking up that phone. I'm calling back. You know what it is? When my child calls. Because when my child number come up in my phone, I don't know what she's calling for. I don't know if she's calling to be silly. I don't know if she's calling to ask for money. I don't know what she want to do. I don't know if she's saying, Daddy, meet me. Daddy, greet me. Daddy, let's go eat. Let's hang out. Boom, boom, boom. But I do know this. It could be a call of trouble. It could be that she needs me. I like verse 2 because verse 2 proves to us that we can be wrong and daddy still answer. Lean in. That we could be at fault and daddy still answer. That we could be in a dark place in our lives. That we could be in the far country. That we could be in the pig pen. And guess what? When family won't answer. Woo, when friends won't answer. When church folks won't answer. And co-workers won't answer. I like to recommend somebody. I know somebody that'll answer. You hear what I'm saying? All right, here we go. Let me go because I'm getting this time, getting caught up. He heard me out of the belly of hell. Now watch this. There's two things you got to know, and I'll move quickly. One, the first thing you realize from verse 1 is God heard him out of the belly of the fish. In verse 2, God hears him out the belly of hell. I'm not making it up, y'all. In verse 1, he cries to God, where? Out of the belly of the fish. Okay? It says it at the end of verse 1, out of the fish belly. But then in verse 2, he says, he hears me out of the belly of hell. In other words, in verse 1, he says, I'm crying to God based on where I am physically. Verse 2, I'm crying to God based on where I am spiritually. Lean in. God told me to tell somebody, it don't matter where you are physically or where you are spiritually, the ear of God can find you and the voice of God can answer you. Man, won't that preach right there? That'll preach right there, y'all. I don't care where you are physically or spiritually. The ear of God can hear you. The eyes of God can see you. The hand of God can lift you. The voice of God can find you. You got it? Woo, let me leave that alone. Okay, let me get out of 2. Let me get out of 2 because 2 going to mess me up in a minute. It says, and thou heardest me. All right, verse number 3. And thou hast cast me into the deep in the midst of the sea, and the floods compass about me. All the billows and the waves pass over me. So verse number 3 and 4, we see Jonah's condition. We see the condition that he's in, all right? So he's actually prescribing, Lord have mercy. He's actually describing his condition. Then said I was cast out of the sight, yet I will look again toward the holy temple. Man, if I had time, golly. Okay, I don't have time to exegete it like I want, but here it is. In verse 3 and 4, I want you to pay attention to something. He's explaining, he's speculating, he's expressing what he's experiencing, all right? He's experiencing the overflow, the overwhelming now of the sea, of the floods. Why? Because you got to remember something. The whale is the biggest fish in the sea. But most of that is because even though his skin is 2.5 feet thick, though his blubber is 28 inches thick, most of the whale's weight is made up off of water, critters, and shrimp. Lean in. So when Jonah say that the wave, that the water is going over him, he's in one of the 4 compartments of the fish's belly, but as the whale opens his mouth, all the water gushes in. He goes to the top of the surface, blows the blowhole, and then the water goes out. So Jonah is experiencing water coming in and water going out. But let me show you the miracle of God. He done went through a throat that was too small, done passed teeth or a slate and haven't been cut. He's in acidic acids that have not burned him. He's in a cabinet that have not suffocated him. And now he's covered with water that have not drowned him. Man, you know what? It's hard for me. It's hard for me to get into this word because preaching is what I do. And I just want to stand up because I just want to be behind the bookboard right now. Let me say it one more time. Good God Almighty, that's a good point. I got to get out of here. Look, y'all. Listen. The whale's teeth or the baleen slate could have scratched or cut him, but God kept him. He goes through a throat that's too small to even allow passageway, but God kept him. He ends up in the 4th compartment, one of the 4 compartments of the whale belly. God keeps him. He ends up dealing with gastritic acidic acids on his body, but God covers him. He ends up in a chamber where there is no oxygen, but yet he can still breathe. Now he got water gushing in from the whale, and yet he's not drowned. Somebody ought to just yell at me. You ought to just yell at me. And you ain't even got to say preach, Bishop. You ain't got to say, listen, you ain't got to pay me no compliment. Just yell at me and just say God is where you are. Just say he's able. He's able. Let me tell you something. God is a keeper. You see what I'm saying? God is amazing. God can keep you in situations that will make man throw their hands up. God will come in, work it out, and baffle your greatest intellect. Let me keep moving. I'm getting excited. I'm running out of time. But look at verse number 4. I'm sorry, y'all. Can I just stop at verse number 4 one more time? Verse number 4 says something that preachers don't talk about. Look at the end of verse number 4. It says, this is Jonah talking. I will look again toward thy holy temple. How much time do I have? Good God Almighty. In 17 verses in chapter 1, guess what he's trying to do? He's trying to get away from what? The presence of God. He's trying to get away from the mandate of ministry. He's trying to get away from the duty that God has placed on him. 17 chapters, he's trying to get away. Lean in. 17 chapters, he's trying to get away from worship. But in verse 4, guess what he said? My mind is on the temple. Whoa, wait a minute. I thought you didn't want to do the temple work. The temple work was for you to go to Nineveh and preach. But your mind went on the temple then. Your mind went on the temple when you bought the ticket. Your mind went on the temple when you got in the boat. Your mind went on the temple when you went to sleep. Your mind went on the temple when you headed to Tasha. God has a way, don't he? God has a way of turning you around. But I got some good news for you tonight. In verse 4, chapter 1, his mind wasn't on the temple. But in verse 4, chapter 2, his mind is on the temple. But you know what the good news is? The good news is not just that he's come from running from God to running toward God. The good news is that we serve a God that allows U-turns. Lean in. You can make a U-turn in the middle of the street of your life, and God will say to you, come on, my child. I'm just glad you changed direction. Verse 4, you see Jonah, he's becoming, you see? He's becoming now. He's evolving into who God has called him to be. Because remember, the word Jonah means mourning dove. A dove is a bird that's fragile that takes flight. So now you see Jonah. Moving from being fragile. And he's kind of giving you some ego characteristics. He's saying, hey, I got my mind on the temple. I'm ready now. Watch this. Look at verse 5. The waters compassed about me. Okay, I gave it that. Even to my soul. All right. The depth closed me round about. The weeds were wrapped about my head. When he says the weeds, he's talking about seaweed. Okay, you got the seaweed now wrapped about his head. Where does seaweed come from, Bishop? The seaweed comes from the algae that have gone into the throat of the whale when the whale opened his mouth. All that's down there now in the compartment of the whale's belly. It then wrapped itself around Jonah's neck. Watch this. What does that prove? That proves that you can pray. Now where's the whale? The whale is at the bottom of the sea. My sisters and brothers, this proves that we can pray in the darkest hour. Because it's dark in the belly of the whale at the bottom of the sea. We can pray in the darkest hour. We can pray no matter where we are. In other words, we can pray anytime. We can pray anywhere. We can pray anyhow. We can pray upside down in the belly of a whale with seaweed around our neck, with no oxygen to breathe, gastritic acids all in our bodies, water gushing in. And yet, he can still pray. So don't look at me talking about the anguish and the agony of your situation as if prayer cannot avail. I don't care what's going on. If you are conscious, you can pray. Let me say it again. If you are conscious, you can pray. You see that? All right, let's keep going. I went down, verse number 6. I went down to the bottom of the mountain, the earth, where the bars were about for me ever. He has yet brought me up out of life from corruption. Do I have time? How much time I got? How much time I have? Okay, all right. Verse number 6. Hello to everybody in California. I'm calling y'all out for a reason. Everybody in California, hello. All my friends, especially Dr. Melvin King, I love you, bro. Best friends since elementary, since high school. Love you, man. Doing a great job up there in Hollywood. Great job. I would have been up there 3 or 4 times for you. But as soon as this let up, to all my crew out there in LA, love y'all so much. Can't wait to get to you. I've been all over LA, Oakland, and a lot of times in San Fran. Preached a lot of conferences in San Fran. I remember my first time going to San Francisco. Why are you telling me this, Bishop? Lean in. I was coming across a bridge I had been on for the first time. It was called the Golden Gate Bridge. To my sister, who I love, she know what I'm talking about, from San Fran. All right? I'm coming over the Golden Gate Bridge, and they say to me, Bishop, they point to a facility that's sitting out in the sea. It's on an island, and the facility is named after the island it's sitting on. It was called Alcatraz. All right? Now, Alcatraz was a federal prison, a federal penitentiary that was open. I made a note of it. It was open on August 11, 1934. It closed March 21st, 1963. It was shut down the year I was born. Alcatraz had 3 levels in it, 4 blocks, and had a back hall that was called the Hole. The Hole was for the most dangerous prisoners in the United States. The thing that made Alcatraz was supposed to have been the world's most secure prison. They said nobody could break out of Alcatraz. I'm going to tell you that. The reason they said nobody could break out of Alcatraz was because Alcatraz was about 1.5 miles on an island in the middle of the sea. Y'all got it? All right. They said they couldn't break out because there was 3 main reasons. Well, really 4. One, because of the guards. Because of the guards, they had these penitentiary trained guards at Alcatraz that was trained to kill if you tried to escape. All right. Then it was on the island, but the island was surrounded by these rocks, these big. You have to see it, and so they didn't even think if you got past the guard, they didn't think you could even survive going down the rocks and the edges and the cliffs. If you got past that, the average human being could not survive in the ocean, in the water, because the water was so cold. It said once you swim 5 minutes, your lungs would collapse and you would die. Then it was because of the currency of the water that they said you couldn't make it. All right? Alcatraz was known as the greatest holding cell in water. It was built August 11, 1934. Lean in. It was built August 11, 1934. God prepared a maximum security prison for Jonah in the Bible. God prepared a holding cell. This was the first floating jail on water. And Jonah didn't escape it. God made it release him. Did y'all get that? Before there was an Alcatraz, there was a fish that God prepared to become a holding cell, a 3-day sentence for a prophet named Jonah that didn't want to do what God told him to do. Y'all got it. Y'all got it. Do you not know that out of all the things that God ever told somebody to build in the Bible, the one thing he never told man to build, God never told a man in the Bible, not one man, to build a jail. He didn't tell a man to build it. Samson went to jail, but he never told him to build a jail. Paul went to jail. He never told him to build a jail. Silas went to jail. He didn't tell him to build a jail. Peter went to jail. He didn't tell him to build a jail. Joseph went to jail. He didn't tell him to build a jail. Jeremiah went to jail. Just to name a few. Remember? He didn't tell him to build a jail. Right? God never specialized in jails because God don't specialize in bounding. He doesn't want us bound. He wants us free. God ain't trying to lock us up. He's trying to give us liberty. God locks up Jonah just to hold him long enough to get his attention. And there's somebody right here today. God told me to tell you, he got you on lockdown because he's trying to get your attention. And once he gets your attention, the doors that have bound you are going to come open. Man, that's good teaching right there. The doors that bound you are going to swing open. All right, let's come back to the text real quick. We got it? All right, I need about 5 minutes. I got that? I'm good? All right, so we come back. Okay, verse 7. When my soul fainted. Okay, when my soul fainted. All right. In verse 7, you're going to see Jonah's conviction. Which what it says? When my soul fainted within me, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came unto thee into thine holy temple. What did Jonah say? Jonah says in verse 7, my soul fainted. Now, whenever you hear the word fainted, I'm sure most of y'all know this. The number one reason why people faint is because their blood drops low and they get oxygen cut off going to the brain and they'll faint. So they can faint because of medical conditions and things of such. All right? It could be heart rhythm out of beat, whatever, you know, it's a lot of different, whatever. I won't go through it all. But when the Bible talks about fainting, also in early culture, when they say a person fainted, it also meant that a person cowered down or a person got scared. Somebody say, oh, did he fight? And they'll say, oh, no, he was faint. That means he was scared. Oh, he fainted. That meant he was a coward. He chickened out, as we say, he was a little chickened out. He tucked the other way. When Jonah said his soul fainted, what Jonah was saying is that I felt my inner man breaking. Ooh, there's a song came out a couple years ago to say I need healing for my soul. Jonah said, I felt my inner man breaking. That's what he meant when he said my soul fainted. I felt weak on the inside. In other words, I felt humbled. I felt an inner crushing. Okay? I felt humility. You see what I'm saying? But look what he says. He says, my soul fainted within me. Okay, I humbled down, I crushed down, I bent over. All right? But look what he says. When I remembered the Lord. I'm coming home, y'all. I'm coming home. There is some trouble that can hit your life that will make you remember the Lord. You're not arrogant. You're not talking about, oh, I'm this, I'm that. I'm Mr. This, I'm Miss That. I got this, I got that. You ain't concerned about none of that. Trouble can hit your life and it will humble you and it will make you remember who God is. It will make you remember what God can do. It'll make you remember what God has said. It'll make you remember, okay, what God instructed you to do, what God wanted for you. It'll make you remember how far he brought you from. It'll make you remember where he brought you to. You got me? It'll make you remember the goodness of God. The Bible said, Jonah said, I remember. As if Jonah said, in chapter 1, I had amnesia. But in chapter 2, I got my mind back. I don't have time. I don't have time. Prodigal son, Luke 15, what did he say? When he said in the pig pen. He said something that people don't talk about. He says, when he came to himself. When his mind came back. You know what it means? It means when I remembered. And the Lord wants me to tell somebody right now, the reason why you're in an unnecessary chapter is because you have not remembered who God is. You dealing with stuff you shouldn't have to deal with. You up against stuff you shouldn't have to be up against. You're in a bad situation, and God wants you to be in a good situation. Some of y'all are in a good situation. God wants you to be in a great situation. Some of y'all are in a nighttime situation. God wants you to be in a lifetime situation. Some of y'all with Mr. and Miss Right, some of y'all are with Mr. and Miss Right now instead of with Mr. and Miss Right because you won't remember. Some of y'all on the job catching the blues, stressed out because you won't remember. You won't remember. Some of y'all are being mentally abused, verbally abused because you won't remember. You gotta remember. I wake up every day, I lay down every night. I go through the course of my day remembering who God is. You got it? All right, watch this. You got to remember. You got to remember. You got to remember who he is. You got to remember who he is. That's conviction. His conversion. We're going to go. But I will sacrifice. Here's Jonah's conversion. He says, I will sacrifice unto thee with voice of thanksgiving. I will pay that vow to owe to you. There's three things that Jonah recognizes in that verse. One is praise. He says, I will sacrifice unto thee with a voice of thanksgiving. Thanksgiving. That's praise. Then payment. I will pay that I have vowed. 3 is power. Salvation is the Lord. You see that? Jonah says, you know what, God? You bring me out of this. You're never going to have to worry about me praising you. You're never going to have to worry about me not seeding, not tithing, not giving, not paying you my vows, honoring my financial obligations, or even honoring the promises that I made you verbally, the vows, the covenant that I made you. Thirdly, I admit right now that I know that you are my salvation, my deliverer, my deliverance. I know who you are. Closing out, verse number 10. And the Lord spake unto the fish, and the fish vomited out Jonah upon dry land. All right, was that a good time? I'm good? All right. Can I ask y'all? Can I ask y'all a question real quick? Verse 10. And the Lord did what, y'all? Spoke to the fish. Can I tell y'all something that people don't ever talk about when they deal with this? This is what I'm closing out on. Lean in. Lean in. I've enjoyed you tonight. I enjoyed you tonight. I enjoyed you tonight. Lean in. I enjoyed you tonight. I enjoyed you tonight. Verse number 10. Don't ever forget what I'm getting ready to tell you. You can tell everybody. Bishop Drake Smith told me this. Verse number 10. You ready? Verse number 10 says something nobody expounds this popular. Here it is. It says, and the Lord spoke unto the fish. What's the point, Bishop? Who just got through praying? Jonah. Who's in trouble? Jonah. Who's in a storm? Jonah. Who's surrounded by gastritic acid? Who's struggling to breathe? Who got seaweed around his neck? Who got water gushing over his head? Who's in the belly of the whale at the bottom of the sea in a place of darkness? Who feels like he's in the shoals of hell? Jonah. Who just got through crying out? Jonah. Who just got through praying? Jonah. Who called God? Jonah. Who did God call back? The whale. Good night. Yeah, see, some of y'all slow. Jonah called God. Watch this. Jonah called God. God called the whale. Let me do it again. Jonah called God on this phone. God called the whale on that phone. Y'all ain't got it yet? Sometimes when God can't talk to you, he talks to your situation. Lean in. Lean in. Sometimes you praying and you trying to figure out, God, why you not talking to me? God told me to tell you. It's not that he ain't talking. He's talking to your situation. Sometimes talking to you is not going to be the answer. Sometimes you got to talk to who you need him to talk to. Lean in, lean in. Sometimes he got to talk to the demon that got you bound. Sometimes he got to talk to the storm that got you needing shelter. Sometimes you got to talk to the person that holds your emotions. Sometimes you got to talk to your boss. Sometimes you got to talk to your supervisor. Come on, lean in. Sometimes you pray to God, and instead of God talking to you, he goes right to your situation. Why would God do that? Watch this. It made no sense for God to talk to Jonah because Jonah is in the belly of the whale at the bottom of the sea. Jonah can't get out the whale's belly. If the whale was to open his mouth at the bottom of the sea, Jonah would drown. So God says, listen, it don't do me no good to tell you right now what I need to do. I'm going to talk to you in a minute. I'm going to talk to you, watch this, when I get you on dry land. So God called the whale. God called the whale and told the whale, let my child go. Y'all ought to be shouting, jumping, and crying. Because what I just told y'all is such great revelation. I just told y'all right now, you can rest well tonight when you get through praying. Because whatever you praying about, God's going to talk to that situation. Do y'all hear me? Hey, guess what? Do y'all know what sea he was in? Mediterranean Sea. Do you know how deep that sea is at the middle of it? 14,400 feet deep. God's voice had to go across 2,600 miles of water, had to go down 14,000 feet and talk to the whale. Have y'all ever thought about this? Not one seaman, not one mariner, not one captain, not one person in Tasha, 120,000, in Nineveh, 120,000, not one person heard God's voice but the whale. Night. Nobody heard God. It's nowhere in the Bible. It's nowhere in Scripture where anybody heard God tell the whale, let Jonah go. Didn't nobody hear it but the whale. Y'all ain't ready for me. Because when God made the whale, he gave the whale something he didn't give man. He gave the whale a frequency level of hearing that is 13 times higher than any human. So when God spoke to the whale, guess what God had to do? He just got on the whale's frequency. Night. Y'all got to get out of here. So when he speaks to the whale's the only one that can hear him. Just like when he speaks to you in the spirit, he gets on your frequency. You can be in a crowd of people sitting up at church and God can drop a word in your spirit and you hopping up running, shouting. Guess what? The people around you don't know what's wrong with you because they ain't on your frequency. They ain't on your channel. They ain't, come on somebody. God is so amazing that when he got ready to get Jonah out of an unnecessary chapter, he got on a frequency that only the whale could hear. The whale vomited Jonah out of his belly. And the Bible said he came out on dry land. And guess what? Then the Bible says in chapter number 3, and the word of God came to Jonah a second time. And when he came to him that second time, he said, Jonah, I'm going to tell you the same thing I told you in chapter 1. Because these have been 2 unnecessary chapters. So here it is. I need you to go to Nineveh and preach to the Ninevites. And the Bible said, and Jonah rose up early to go to Nineveh. Hallelujah. He just finished 2 unnecessary chapters. Well, Wings of Faith, Faith Community, Faith Nation, if this has been a blessing to you, I'd like for you to be a blessing to us, go to WLFATL.com, click on donate. If you'd like to bless me personally, I sure would like that. Oh, I sure would like that. You can just cash out me, Dreyfus Smith, DREYFUS, Dreyfus Smith, cash out, and I sure would appreciate the blessing. You can download Givelify and pull up Wings of Faith Worldwide Ministries and give that way, or you can make your check payable to Wings of Faith, P.O. Box 425, Conley, Georgia. Wings of Faith, P.O. Box 425, Conley, Georgia, 30288. Or you can just drop it by our office every day or any day, except Monday, hours between, I want to say 10 and 2, 10 and 3, somewhere in there. All right? Hey, I'll be on here tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Giving you a good 12:15, giving you a good 30-minute prayer, quick little word. And I leave it like I always do. Ooh, y'all working me. Y'all working me. Y'all got me in here sweating like I'm in the pulpit at church. All right? Y'all got to stop working me so hard. All right, I'm out. Love you all. Be good to God. Be good to God. Be good to God. Be good to God. And God will always be good to you. Love you.